I'm very happy to welcome you both, our CDL Estonia mentors, to this Zoom call. And this is actually recorded for Delta Trends Day, where we want to explore the hybrid security and learning from experience so far. And I called very, boldly this panel power players and how investors, universities, and startups all together can shape new global order. And you are representatives of these power players. So I'd like to get your input, your ideas exactly today, as these times change very fast around us. So maybe I will start from Andy, you, as you are the investor and also you have been working closely with the universities. How do you see what unique opportunities we see here on the eastern border, so Nordic and Eastern Europe, and why defense or security innovation is so important here right now? And also, not only innovation, but the innovation with impact. What do you see?
So I'm going to make 3 points here, Kadri. The first is the extent to which there's real value in working with people who have real knowledge of history, cultural context, and a realistic understanding of the threats that are posed to NATO on its eastern flank. I think we've been through maybe 2 or 3 decades where there have been, in my view, serious miscalculations by political leaders in Europe and the United States across all political parties with respect to the nature of the threat that comes from the Russian bear that's on your border. And I don't believe that those miscalculations were shared by people who live in this part of the world. I think they have a much more realistic perspective, and that's because they've experienced real history associated with that particular issue. So that's the first point. The second point is that we are now engaged in a kinetic war on the eastern border of NATO. And the people in this part of the world have a much deeper and, again, much more realistic understanding of what the modern battlefield looks like. And so that's a huge opportunity and an asset that can be leveraged by people who might otherwise be surprised if there's ever any kind of kinetic conflict that comes across that border. And then the last piece here is that Estonia is an extraordinary example of success using digital technology. And so that proximity to the battlefield, combined with the extraordinary ability of the people in this part of the world to know how to use modern technology to do things differently, is another really important asset that means that this is a really, really valuable place to be if you want to innovate in strategic deterrence.
Yeah, I agree with you. And John, I don't want you to kind of defend all these miscalculators that Andy was referring to, but since you have been working together with governments who are also big investors and relevant actors, so and your field is strategic communication. What do you think? What kind of storytelling and strategic messaging is relevant in this part of the world, as we are talking now, CDL Estonia?
Yeah, so I'm going to pick up on Andy's point, and as I do that, thank you for the opportunity to participate in another CDL event. And you guys do extraordinary work, and I think you should be recognized more for it. So thank you for having me, and thank you for having me alongside Andy. I always learn so much when he speaks, so that's really welcome. I think the stories we tell depend upon the history we've lived. And therefore narratives become essential, particularly in framing strategic deterrence. So everything that's happening in the battlefield or candidly in the battle space now is relevant. And it's no longer theoretical, it's now practical. And I applaud Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Nordics for working on an approach where their citizens participate in an effort to make sure that they do one thing a week that contributes to having Putin look in their direction and say, today is not a good day. And that would not be possible without narrative, and narrative is storytelling. And that's why strategic communications matters from a deterrent perspective.
Mhm. Yeah, that's you mentioned several times CDL, and we are obviously in CDL team, CDL Estonia team, very, very grateful to your both, Andy, you as a partner and investor into us, and John, you as our mentor, because mentors are actually at the heart of the CDL program. And it's quality, it's dynamism, it's kind of value for founders. But talking about this, what is the general role of this public-private partnership, such as CDL? Where all these power players work together to advance innovation, or also separately the role of different ecosystem players in advancing innovation, and maybe more precisely now the how or what we can offer startup founders, because they are those who are doing the hard work and living it through the program.
So,
What we can offer them most.
yeah, let me begin with that. And no
Yeah.
matter how innovative or forward-leaning governments are, they still move at the speed of bureaucracy. And what becomes essential in pairing the private sector together with governments, even a government as forward-leaning and as successful as Estonia, it creates a space out there a little bit further that allows innovation to turn at the speed of opportunity or at the speed of threat, as Andy so articulate mentioned before. Uh, and that space enables incubators to thrive and then bring the government in for implementation, not just for experimentation. And so I think we're seeing a new model emerge in the national security domain where public-private partnerships are not designed solely, which they are in many countries in the West, to get money from the government into the private sector. This is where the private sector is plowing the road to enable the government to place much better investments on capabilities that are needed to prevent conflict or to win a conflict once it starts.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Andy,
Yeah,
what do
I'll
you
build
think?
on yeah, I'll build on what John said, which he said, I mean, very eloquently. This expanded space for innovation. A program like CDL Estonia for strategic deterrence innovation is incredibly valuable for startups. And that's because startups need typically three things. They need capital, they need coaching, and they need customers. Those three things. And if you're a part of the CDL Estonia cohort, you're going to be in a room full of mentors that includes defense industry VCs. And that means you've got people who have capital that's dedicated to investing in companies like yours. You're going to be surrounded by people who are experts in company building and who know how to take deep tech companies and turn them into something that's potentially massive. And you're going to find yourself talking to military leaders from around the world who have close connections to the people who do procurement. And that means you're going to have access to customers. And so, again, if you imagine that all startups need capital, they need coaching, and they need customers, and you're going to have people who can give you access to all three in the room.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And actually, I don't want, because you are both from America, I don't want to provoke you, analyzing the problems of Europe. But if you would like, you are very most welcome, right? But my last question, which I want to discuss with you, is actually if you look at these ecosystems all over the world, right? And we have this panel called Power Players. So who needs to step up the most? Because why I'm asking this is that outside viewers also sometimes have more clearer view. I have been mentioned several times by our mentors that in Estonia they see public-private partnerships as something that is of strength. But if you would ask random Estonian, they will never see that as something special about Estonia. So this is, why I'm asking, who needs to step up and how we can improve the things. beyond maybe also CDL, right? Which is, kind of more narrow. I don't know, Andy, maybe you would like to begin.
Well, so obviously we are going through a period where there has been some, shall we say, instability associated with the traditional alliances within NATO. And to some extent, that instability has been created because many countries have failed to fulfill on their commitment to invest appropriately in the defense capabilities that we now know that they need. Interestingly, I remember maybe a decade ago pointing out that Estonia was the only country in NATO that was meeting its 2% commitment at that time, other than the United States. And so, look, one of the really interesting things about Estonia as a little country is the extent to which they actually lead Europe, even though they're one of the tiniest members of the EU. And we can point to not just the fact that you're the most digital country in the world, you're the first country in the world to mandate AI in high school. I could go on and on. But you're a country that's not afraid to lead. So, look, if you now look across the NATO bloc, I mean, the Spanish are not even willing to do 2% now. And so there is a really important need for the Europeans to have the desire to defend their own territory and to make the investments that are required to do that. And then, as John has pointed out, that needs to be done by there being a broad commitment that's both public and private to do that work. So it's not somebody else's job. And John made a really great point here about the extent to which people in Ukraine are, or the Ukrainians are leveraging their civilian population to support the war effort in many different dimensions. And that's really, really important. So public-private partnership and having clarity and making the case that we need to defend ourselves and not just rely on other people to do it for us is really important.
And I think on the public-private partnerships, one of the challenges that emerges in a number of countries is government officials, political leaders, CEOs reference public-private partnerships, but to many people, many citizens, public-private partnerships are probably well known, but not known well. And it's important to make sure that as people look at the true value of public-private partnerships in the national security domain, that the government recognizes, as much as the private sector, that there is a role for everyone and everyone has a role.
Mm-hmm.
And once that happens, then you build a network and a framework in which that network operates that creates a dynamic of strategic deterrence. So when Putin looks in your direction, he goes, I definitely don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really agree.
Yeah, you didn't mention at all universities. Why is that?
Maybe because you didn't ask. So
Okay.
sorry. So universities play a key role. If you look in the value proposition, the emergence of new technologies, inevitably the idea happens at a university. That's where the first spark of creativity or innovation occurs. Then it moves from a university to what was called for generations garages. There was more innovation happening in garages in the United States than was happening at DARPA and at NASA and at NOAA. And there was a recognition in the US national security space by the late Secretary of Defense Ash Carter that innovation was occurring. And what we didn't need was greater firewalls. We needed smarter membranes, the ability to reach out from the classified world, see what's going on in garages, find capabilities that would make a difference in preventing conflict or winning a conflict should one occur, and pulling that into the classified world. So universities are that spark of innovation, that spark of creativity in a long value chain that results in capabilities being in public-private partnerships.
Yeah,
They
they are more like
don't
infrastructure.
happen in the shower anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was, asking you many things, and you were very brave to give me these answers. But is there anything I didn't ask besides the universities that you would like to stress, or you thought that that would be relevant in this panel discussion of ours?
I want to make a very generalizable point that I'd like to just to lay on the table here. I've said for maybe 2 decades that what digital technology does is to shift the world from building, people, product, professional, to mobile, software, service, consumer. In the world of e-commerce, it means you don't go to a bookstore to see a clerk who can find you a novel and check you out. You use an iPad, you use software, you download content, right? So it's a complete shift in the way things work. If you bring that into a military world, what that means is instead of blowing up buildings and killing people using bombs and military professionals, we're moving into a world where we're taking down communication networks and hacking software. We're using cyber weapons and we're leveraging civilians. It's exactly the same transition, right? And John made the point about not the battlefield, but the battle space. That's a great word, right? Because that's actually the dynamic into which we have to build strategic deterrence. And this shift in the way the world works is a really powerful way to think about what the future may look like when it comes to warfare.
Yeah.
And I would build on that and say, for anybody who's watching this or listening to this or has a friend that's watching or will share it, the only way the bad guys win is if you give up. And if you have an idea, whether it comes from the shower, from a garage, from a university, or just in the middle of the night, and you think it can make a difference to preventing conflict, to stopping Russia from coming across Estonia's border or anyone's border, you should bring it to CDL before the end of the day and let them evaluate it, because good ideas come and go. Great ideas are what's really needed.
Yeah, it's a great point.
That's a very good point, and we can even recognize these great ideas from good ones, separate them when we are evaluating it together from different perspectives. So nobody can do it alone, because many smart people, but everybody is smart in their own fields, right? Let's come together and put our knowledge together, and especially in open and friendly atmosphere, these ideas get flowing. So it's very nice that you have taken the time to talk to me, and I already see so many headlines from your talks, both of you, that we can, label our further activities with. And I wish you much success as CDL Estonia mentor and mentors. And thank you both very much. And I hope CDL Estonia lives another 3 or more years to be able to accelerate also security and resilience startup. So thank you, and see you in our CDL Estonia meetings.